Picture with my friend Devin just came up. Such a sweet tall bean. Devin, if you're watching this, hi. Hello everybody, my name is Isis and this is Isis Says Hi. I like to do a lot of research videos on topics that matter to me. Sometimes I do random rambles about stuff or vlogs. If you like any of that stuff, please feel free to subscribe. And if you like this video while you're watching, give it a thumbs up. So this video might be a two-parter depending on how it goes. I like to do run-throughs of my videos before I post them or before I record, just so I can know the length and how comfortable I feel with talking. This video made me thirsty and dehydrated. I'll just make sure to recap anything from the past videos that I think are important for informing you into the second video. Computers have their own language, and that language is called machine code, and this tells the computer exactly what to do. While it is possible to learn machine code, it would take a long time. So most programmers, developers, and coders use something like Python, which is programming language software used to help to tell the computer what the programmer wants to be shown. So say we ask Python to tell the computer to say, like, to write WAP. Don't look it up. Python will translate that command to machine code, which is what the computer uses. So the computer knows its screen should say WAP. Programmer to Python to machine code to computer. That's essentially what it is. So in coding, every line of code tells the computer to do something. So if we had a document full of a lot of lines of code, it would be called a script, and scripts can be compiled through like a compiler, and that can create a program. A good example of scripts and coding that is probably a little bit more relatable is when we used to put music and backdrops on our MySpace pages. That was as coding. If you play video games, sometimes you can go into the script of the video games and manipulate the code to be what you want it to be. You were essentially coding because you were telling that game, that program, to change itself to reveal what you just changed in that script. If you are doing Sims 4 and you use, I think it's MCC Command Center, you might have looked at last exceptions and you would maybe have been able to figure out maybe what cheat or what thing was broken in your game. That's coding. So technically, you can put that you were a coder on your resume. Anyways, computers will do exactly what you tell them to do. That might be great because you want computers to spout out whatever you want it to spout out, but it can also be really bad. So say you have a recipe or directions to a friend's house. That's usually what an algorithm is called. So it's just a set of instructions. And then when we talk about social media and news feeds, your YouTube recommendations, your Facebook news feed, or your Twitter feed, or your Instagram feed, programmers, developers, whoever are creating algorithms, those algorithms will then be used in machine learning tools. So you'll give it a set of instructions of like maybe what to abide by, and then you will also say, keep trying to improve based off on this. Because most algorithms are used in machine learning, the algorithm can be unpredictable. So unpredictable to the point that the person who created the algorithm in the first place might not even be able to go back and fix what they made a mistake on. Algorithms can unintentionally, depending on how it was created, can unintentionally be really racist or really sexist. So machine learning tools are usually trained, is what they call them, and they're trained to be used for a certain purpose. So this training usually means that you are exposing whatever tool you're using to a bunch of data, and then that computer learns to make certain judgments or predictions about the information that it's getting, and based on the patterns that it's noticing. For example, you can train this machine learning tool to figure out what a book looks like. You'll tell it the dimensions of a book might look like, the colors of what a book can look like. You bombard it with images of what a book is and what a book isn't. After a lot of testing and refining it to make sure that it understands what a book is, the machine learning tool should know then what a book is. But that is not really what machine learning tools are used for. It's not always used for something as simple as a book. A lot of times machine learning tools are used for things that are really complex. Your Twitter feed and your YouTube feed and all of those things are really complex, but they can also be used for facial recognition software, so reading humans' faces. And so depending on who is writing that code, it can have a lot of really bad implications because they're not also making sure that that algorithm knows how to read everyone's faces. The world of code and coding is usually white and male dominated. When codes and algorithms are written, they might unintentionally make codes and algorithms biased. So for example, facial recognition software has problems recognizing black faces because its algorithms are mostly written by white engineers. These engineers build on pre-existing code libraries, which are also written by other white engineers. They're not taking into account the fact that not only them exists in this world and their experiences exist in this world, there's a lack of diversity among algorithm designers, just coders in general, and a lack of training about the social and historical context of their work. This means that they'll unintentionally create algorithms that push white and male creators mostly, or when those tests on Twitter happened, it only showed white faces. For a gendered example, in 2017, a St. Louis executive named Emre Sarbak noticed that Google Translate, instead of translating the Turkish gender-neutral pronoun O, it would assume a gender instead of making it neutral. Sentences like O is a nurse is translated to she is a nurse, and O is a doctor is translated to he is a doctor. They used other sentences in Google Translate, and the algorithm decided that doctors, soldiers, and entrepreneurs were men, and nurses and teachers were women. This also happened when they used gender-neutral terms in Finnish and Chinese. Google Translate was told to learn from an existing body of writing. When they're learning from these bodies of writing, they're also learning how men and women are described, and that can make something really biased. So think about that when we're talking about the criminal justice system and the tool is getting all of its data from just the history of the criminal justice system. So this is all called algorithmic bias, the idea that artificially intelligent software, the software that we count to give us Netflix recommendations or to determine our qualifications for a loan, also turns out to upkeep social bias, like racism, sexism, all the isms, all the phobias, all the bigotry. While Asians and South Asians tend to be well represented in the tech and coding industry, this only means that Asians and South Asians will be able to account for Asian and South Asian faces, but folks who aren't Asian and South Asian will not be accounted for. So according to a 2011 study by the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, facial recognition software is more accurate on Asian faces when it's created by firms in Asian countries. If you are going to be creating these kinds of tools and going to put them into programs that can maybe make life-changing decisions, you need to have people in the room who can give different contexts to that software so that way it isn't inaccurate. These kinds of tools can't be tested for bias against one group. A tool may be accurate on white women, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it works well with black women. Again, as we had said before, that there are pre-existing code libraries that people use to create algorithms on top of. Sometimes these programs take certain algorithms and bring them to the US. So for example, Static 99 was a tool that was designed to predict recidivism among offenders. But that tool was created in Canada that had only a 3% population of black folks. It's also used in the US, which has a 12% population of black folks. Other tools that were used in the US were developed in Europe, where 2% of the population is black. And then again, there are other things that are different between these countries. We have very different kind of like socioeconomic conditions. There's so many things that are very different between all of the countries. It wouldn't make sense to use in the US. Some machine learning tools are just also using data from just like really far back in the past past, and a lot of these predictors are usually out of date and haven't been changed to make sure that they aren't being considered. So some machine learning tools think people who don't have a landline are less likely to show up for court. Nobody really has a landline anymore because we all have cell phones. If you don't have a landline, most likely your pretrial hearing will make you have to stay in jail.